Hey, what's up guys? My name is Josh and I actually messed up on something. These are the Koss Porta Pro X's. These are the kind of mass drop or formerly mass drop, now drop collaboration with Koss. And I actually thought I reviewed these about a year ago. I've had these for a year. I genuinely use these pretty much every single day and we'll get into why. But I just thought I had reviewed them. So this is gonna be the review finally of the Koss Porta Pro X. So these are coming in at a kind of an interesting price point given the feature set and depending on where you buy them and what options you want. So you have the regular Koss Porta Pro, then you have the Koss Porta Pro Bluetooth, then you have the Koss Porta Pro with microphone, and then you have the Koss Porta Pro X, which is basically just the Koss Porta Pro with microphone, except it's a little bit cheaper. So the pricing for everything is also a little weird. So you have the Koss Porta Pro standard edition for $35. You have the Koss Porta Pro with Bluetooth for $80. And then you have the Koss Porta Pro with a microphone for $60. And this is coming in at about $38, around about $40 for the Porta Pro X with a microphone. So in my opinion, this is the one to get because it's gonna be a device that is capable of mobile if you choose to use it. And that microphone and the 3.5mm 4-pin might come in handy. So the reason why I'm so disappointed in not having reviewed this so far is I think that this is just about the best $40 headphone that you can get. The eMutiques give this thing a run for its money around about the same price tag, but I think for certain applications, this is actually a bit better than that headphone. So the build at a surface level, given the materials and the size, it's kind of not that impressive, but it does have its benefits. So the fit itself is actually pretty awesome because one, it's pretty lightweight, like really, really lightweight. It kind of just rests on your ears. It's got a variable size via the headband mechanism, which we'll talk about in a second. It also has on the side here, this thing called a comfort zone, whatever, and they have firm to light. Now, when you actually hit this switch, it will actually tilt the actual driver out a little bit more. So if you have a really wide set head, it'll actually kind of fill out those heads a little bit more comfy, but I don't think most people are gonna use this option. And when you're wearing it, it's got pretty even pressure all across the top of the head. It's got these comfort pads here, but this is not a headphone that I would consider at all to be uncomfortable. It's actually fairly comfortable, especially given the lightweight nature of it. Now the headband is this thing that kind of expands and contracts and you can fold this up really, really tightly. I actually have a piece of electric tape on it just to keep it at a specific level because like I said, I use this thing all the time and I'm not throwing it in a bag or anything like that. So I just want it to be exactly where I want it to be every time. I do wish the headband had some sort of a locking mechanism where you could set it and I wouldn't have to tape it, but whatever. Now again, further on the design, this thing is actually pretty cool. So the drivers themselves articulate within the chassis pretty much 360 degrees, so you can really find the exact angle that your ear needs to hit at. The drivers themselves kind of fold in like this and makes for a really small package, and they have this small little hook on the metal band here that kind of loops this all together so it just stays nice and tight like that. And then even further, this is not something that's relevant to I think most people, but certain applications it might be. They have this screw on the side of the left ear only, and that's actually made for a microphone to be screwed into the side if you're at a call center or if you have a gaming headset that you can screw the microphone onto. I could even see potentially using that for something like a mod mic. Now, even though you do have a microphone built into this, if you don't have a 4-pole system and you have a separate input for your microphone like I do on my PC, I only have a headphone out and a microphone in. I don't have an all-in-one. So something like that could be potentially pretty useful. So last couple notes here on the comfort. Given the variability of the headband and where it tends to sit, this actually fits pretty well for a lot of VR headsets and for glasses. So you can see there's actually a slot where glasses will pass over. Actually, let me show you. And it fits right over it, just like that. Pretty solid amount of movement too. I'm not sure what the standard for glasses is, but it doesn't seem to be adding any pressure on the part that touches my ear. Not something I normally test, but I thought that was kind of an accidental benefit to the design. So the cable is a pretty typical rubber cable, and then it terminates to this, again, 4-pole with a little spring on it. Okay, so the application that I've been using it for is actually a sometimes gaming headphone. I use this thing for gaming quite a bit, mostly when I just want to throw something on super lightweight, and if I happen to be doing other stuff and getting up a whole lot, you know, I can risk this ripping off my head on accident and falling and hitting the ground, which it's done a number of times, and it's okay. Now, where I actually use this is not with any amplifier of decent quality, but actually an amp that I consider to be not good, which are the amplifiers in the Blue Yeti mic that I use also for gaming. This just plugs right into it, lets me monitor my voice and have incoming audio playing through that. Now, the reason why I use this as opposed to something else is, one, for gaming, it's actually pretty good, and we'll talk about that when we talk about the sound signature. But two, it's easy to drive. So you can drive this off of a phone or something that's not really putting out a lot of power, and you're going to get pretty decent sound quality without too much juice or without super clean amplification. So that it's kind of an easy use thing, and what I find easiest to use this with is gaming. Now, what I don't want to happen is you to get the interpretation that it's not good for other things because it's good for gaming. That is not true at all. This is actually a fantastic headphone for the money in a lot of areas. And like I said, I think it's probably the best headphone in a $40 price category. So really what makes this stand out is the sound staging and imaging capability. This is the same thing with the KSC75s, except this does something that the KSC75s don't, and a big reason to buy this over the KSC75s, besides comfort, is the bass response. So you got great imaging and soundstage, great bass response, pretty decent mids, and a treble response that's not piercing. It's not an overly sharp treble response. Now, you know, when you're talking about timbre characteristics, you're not really getting something far and ahead better in cost, you know, than how much it costs at the $40 price tag. But you are getting something that is relatively decent, and you can pick out instruments from their different timbre characteristics. You know, different woodwinds are, you know, very obvious. The difference between different sets of chimes and bells, that is all very obvious. And it's not anything groundbreaking, but it is good enough. The treble response also is something that I consider to be fairly pleasing. And the weird part about this is that most headphones that are good at imaging and soundstage, at least most cheaper ones, achieve it via an overemphasis in the treble response. So this reminds me a lot of the, what was it? The 668B. That was a good gaming headphone, but it was kind of crap for everything else because it was just overly harsh and overly bright. And this isn't that way. It's actually a pretty smooth headphone despite there being a decent amount of treble available in terms of information, but not forwardness. Now, the mid-range response is, it's okay. It's not anything, again, fantastic. I think if you want to go up a little bit higher in cost, you're going to get better mid-range responses from slightly more expensive headphones, but those aren't usually going to have as much soundstage capability. And then the bass response is the biggest upgrade from the KSC75, and actually something that this is quite good at. It's lower than you would think, especially because it's basically just the driver on your ear. You would think that because it doesn't have this kind of chamber to work with and it's just straight driver to ear, that it'd be pretty harsh and gritting, but it's not. I actually consider this to be a fairly smooth headphone. Not something that I would describe in any way as unpleasant. It's a fairly pleasing, warm sound signature with soundstage and imaging. So let's talk about the imaging and soundstage, because I think that's the biggest reason to buy this. Part of why it's so good for gaming is the directional capability. So if there's something coming from this angle, you know, kind of 45 degrees in front or 45 degrees behind you on the right side, you're able to tell that position accurately. Now, to be completely honest, this isn't something that is really hard for most headphones to do. So where does this stand out? It stands out in the capability of the layering and the positional depth. So it's got the direction, like everything else, but it's also got this great ability to show you how far in which direction or how close in which direction. So it's completely variable in that way. And you can also hear things behind other things. And that's where the layering comes in. So when it comes to gaming performance, I find this quite admirable, but it's also fairly good for music. And you're probably not going to get soundstage nearly as good as this until you get to something like the SHP 9500, which I think in terms of both gaming and of headphones, I think that's probably the next step up from this. So it's, basically this for 40 bucks, SHP 9500 for 70 to 80, depending on when you get it. Then up from there, it'd probably be the HD58X, then maybe the 6XX, and a couple, headphones. Just keeps going on and on. Now, while for $40, I consider these a fantastic headphone and a fantastic deal that I think most people could probably agree are pretty good. I don't know so much about reliability. These costs either seem to last like 24 hours or 24 years. It's really, it's like, it just depends on when you get it and if you got lucky or not. Although most people, I think, get pretty lucky with it. It's also not perfect in terms of the sound signature. Resolution from, just pure technical performance could be a bit better, especially compared to kind of like IEMs at $40 have resolution down in a way that is a little bit beyond this. And also mid-range, I think, could do with a little bit more of a boost and be a little bit more forward, and that would make this a wonderful headphone for a lot more music, although it's pretty good as it is. So I don't mean that to necessarily harp on it or give you a reason not to buy it, because it's pretty good. But I think in certain areas, of course, like every headphone, it could be just a hair better. All right, guys, thank you so much for watching. Sorry it took me so long to get through this review, but highly recommended for me, definitely.